Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Simon. I am one of the admission counselors here at Sofia University. And today's topic is going to be on the wonderful Doctorate of Business Administration program that we have here at Sofia. It's a wonderful, exciting program. And I have with me Dr. Mary Kay Chess, who is the head faculty, aka the program chair for this program. And I'd love to give her an opportunity to introduce herself and to kind of talk about her background and how she came to Sofia University. So Dr. Chess, if you could please take it away.
Great. Thank you, Ashley. It's a pleasure to be with you and our listening audience today as well. Well, as Ashley said, I am Dr. Mary Kay Chess, and I have the privilege of serving as the chair of the Doctorate of Business Administration, or DBA, as we fondly call it. This is a unique degree in that we're used to, I think, in advanced degrees talking about PhDs. And this one is an applied knowledge. That's the kind of the way we characterize it. And let me tell you what that means. So the doctorate means that for this particular program, we're really focused on leaders willing to step into complex organizational complexities and talk about what are solutions. And I come to this work with a lot of experience, joy, enthusiasm, and support for leaders willing to step into this complexity, because it's not easy work. I have a past career in healthcare as an executive, and then I've been in academia for the past 15 years as dean and chair of programs. And what we really need, I think, more than ever, and is post-COVID, I don't think we have exactly the answers for the future that we're living right now. So this degree is timely. Your interest is timely. These questions are great. Let's see what's next on your mind, Ashley.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of, because we're so focused on having global conscientious leaders kind of looking toward the future and kind of analyzing all of the problems that exist in society and trying to kind of tackle some of those issues. So when it comes to the ideal candidate for this type of program, what kind of students are you looking for to kind of join the DBA cohort?
Great question. So what we are looking for, and those who are probably most successful, are those with experience. And so for large corporations, large global entities, we're looking for mid-level or above. In smaller organization, entrepreneurial organizations, we're looking for executives. We're looking for those people who have been there, tried it, piloted, and are now stepping back and saying, what else? What other solutions are there that I haven't looked at yet? And so that experience is essential, and that willingness to sometimes fail, sometimes pivot, but to do so in a learning community is the kind of adventure or pioneer we want for this program.
Okay, got it. So what would be the benefit for a student to join? Because not all students have gone through a cohort-oriented program. So what is the benefit of having a cohort versus a program that's not designed in a similar fashion? Like, what's the benefit of being part of a cohort?
You know, that's a great question. And as we were designing this particular program, we thought about individual learning paths and individual paths for career advancement. But again, because we're looking for, I'm going to use the word seasoned here. We're looking for seasoned individuals and leaders. And the reason it's a cohort is that we know that even though we know our students are so bright and so focused and so gifted and accomplished, but we also know the global challenges, as you mentioned just a few minutes ago, are so complex that you really need to be in a learning community, not just for the program, but for the aftermath. And we're not talking about an alumni get together once a year. We're talking about you're able to pick up the phone after you graduate or video someone and say, here's the situation I'm facing. You know me. You've worked with me for 3 years. What's my solution here? So it's an intentional learning community in the program, and then it's the gift post the program, because the complexity will just continue to increase, not decrease.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So If, going off of that, if I'm a new student and I'm coming into the program, what can I kind of expect in my first year? So I'm coming in my first year, do I hit the ground running, or are there certain materials that students are introduced to that are really innovative? Are there transpersonal elements because we're a transpersonal school? Can you talk a little bit about like what new students should be expecting when they first come in?
I think you just touched on something that's really essential to think about, and that is the program starts running and the student starts running the moment they open our website and say, this is a transpersonal program. Because this DBA is founded and based and engaged in looking at transformational, our whole philosophy of transpersonal and transformation. And so this is not your DBA as usual. This is a DBA grounded in something very unique. The second reason I say that you really start running right away is that the application process itself is somewhat unusual. Yes, you have to file your letters of reference and you tell us why you're interested, but also at that moment, you start to submit an application that says, here's the project, here's the global project I wish to be engaged in. Now, we know that might change, but what we want to do is start you with the global program and you tell us what it is. And then you talk about, because we're transpersonal, what are my leadership strengths? Because we're interested in building on those strengths. So you actually start that process in the application, and then you interview with the chair, with me, or with one of our core faculty, and you deepen that conversation. So then when you hit your first year in the learning community, your first of the 3 years is really focused on global business and transformative leadership engagement. Every course deepens your leadership and it deepens your project, because your end project is not a dissertation, or your end product is not a dissertation. It is 2 deliverables: a research-based project, global project, that you've tested pilots and approaches and you've wondered and you've talked to colleagues globally. And the second is, what is your leadership plan? What allows you to be a change maker in this project and succeed by sustaining your efforts? So every class builds on that. So in the 3 years, every class or every year has a theme. Your third year, you're really busy producing your project and producing your leadership plan.
Okay, that's excellent. And I'm glad that you emphasize the aspect of like what goes into, for example, so many students will come to a doctorate program and say, oh, it's all going to be research based, but that's not the case because it's application based and heavily focused in this regard. Because like you said, you're looking for people to kind of be business leaders, make that influence and make that change. But what I also appreciate that you addressed was the fact that things can change, because I assume that if a student wants to kind of pivot their direction or they find a new path that they are passionate about from like a business standpoint, so they can work with faculty to work in that new direction. Am I correct in understanding that?
Yeah, and yes, not only will they work with faculty, but they'll be working with their colleagues. And I think part of the joy of being in a learning cohort is that you're really working kind of shoulder to shoulder with people in different disciplines. And isn't that enriching? Because then you automatically get perspectives for your project through very different lenses. And then it's up to you to do the, where does integration now sit and fit? So we absolutely, to your point, we encourage these pivots. We encourage you to use these 3 years to test concepts, and to, do the research or surveys or whatever is practical to further the knowledge. To say that change is constant would be true of this program as well as any business.
Yeah, that's true. And I know kind of some of the topics we've been talking about regarding structure might be a bit abstract for our listeners. So I think to kind of help narrow the focus a little bit, Off the top of your head, do you have any examples of projects that previous students in such programs have done? Not only specifically in our DBA, but on average in a DBA, like what types of projects or topics have you seen some students tackle in your experience?
Great question. And so one of the ways that we also have designed this program is that it ties to the UN goals, because we know that those have been, in a way, vetted globally. And so what better way to start than that? And so the projects that I've seen so far have to do with addressing food deserts. Does everyone have adequate food across the globe? The second is education, particularly for young women. Where is the avenue, the availability, the appetite, the safety for education for young women and young men? It's just a really important, I know I have a vested interest in education, but it's really as essential sometimes as breathing, because it takes you to different conversations. And so, and then the third example I'd say are very tangible, practical. How do we look at renewable energy? What are the resources needed? How do we move that bar in a more sustainable, healthy way? And so we work with a group called the International Sustainability Professionals. We are looking for global contacts in how we do the work. And so those are just three examples of, projects that have been addressed or that are top of mind and top of heart. Again, because we're transpersonal, it's both the mind, it's the whole person involved in these solutions and identifying the problem, because we know the problems come with the whole person.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And what I'm going to assume is that for students who are enrolled in this type of program, you would want them to be kind of aware of what's going on in the news as well. There are some programs that do encourage their students to be very aware of things that are globally changing, as well as like it's a micro level and a macro level of what's happening both in their community and globally in totality as well. And like you said, this is something that I love about our program. It is a combination of mind and heart centered. Oftentimes, what I've observed with other DBA programs is that they're very much set in how are we going to utilize these mental tactics and these benchmarks in order to shift change, without realizing that these are human beings they're interacting with. And when you add emotion into the mix, it can make this a bit of a complex issue. But good leaders can navigate between both of these areas. So I think those are some candidates that we're really looking for, and that at Sofia we're very fortunate to attract, which I think is wonderful. So oftentimes when students come to a program, what they're concerned about is how their academic performance is going to be gauged. So how are students graded, or what kind of grading scale? Like, what does it take to be a successful student in this program?
The way that that's cast is in three different buckets. And, I always hesitate to say three different buckets because it sounds like it's so mechanical, to your point. And all of these three areas of evaluation are really combined, and in total take us again to the leadership plan that every person has to develop. So the first bucket has to do with our self-evaluation. How do I, as an individual, how do I see my own leadership? Am I clear about my mental models and my beliefs? Well, of course, none of us are totally clear, but is there a willingness to get to know myself in a perhaps a new way? Is there a willingness to say, these are my strengths? Usually, I don't know about you, but usually as humans, we're really good about identifying where we're not strong. And that's nice to know, but we're also pretty value laden. And so we want to know what's working for you, and we want to build on that. That's the transpersonal. So the first evaluation comes from self. How am I doing? Am I stretching enough? Am I demonstrating that I am really interested in new skills or greater skills based on my strengths? So that's the first bucket. The second is feedback and mentoring from our peers. That's why the learning cohort. So you get regular and ongoing feedback from your colleagues. And then the third, of course, because this is an academic program, the third is from your faculty. And so the faculty are looking for, is there continued creativity and yet practical application? Are you research-based? Are you practical? Are you innovative? Are you creative? How's your communication? And it doesn't mean that everyone has to be a charismatic speaker. We're not looking for that, but we're looking, can you put together your thoughts in a way that is action-driven and moves everyone to the point you just made a few minutes ago, moves everyone to change, because we know a fundamental of change is people support that which they create. So as a leader, do you allow people, encourage people to co-create with you? So those are the three ways that you're evaluated in this program. And in my experience, that first bucket is really the most critical. We are self-drivers. We just can't help ourselves. And so that one is probably the most rigorous, but all three meld together to say, this is a transformative program. You come into it almost with that kind of banner, beware, you will be transformed, you will transform, and that's how the evaluation takes place.
Oh, that's excellent. I really like how it's a multifaceted process where it's not just a cookie cutter, like you're going to get this grade for doing this performance. You need to be in a public speaking fashion. You need to have these skill sets. So I love that open-mindedness aspect. And I like that the evaluation process involves more than just one vantage point. I think that's very important for people to know when they come into this program. Now, to kind of shift in another direction, in terms of the classroom structure and environment, how much is synchronous, how much is asynchronous? Like, what can a student expect in terms of scheduling and structure for the classroom?
Yeah. So I'm always asked this question about how many hours a week should I commit to? And my question back to people is, how quickly do you read? How quickly do you assimilate and integrate ideas to write? And what do you need to do to maintain work and life balance? And that includes engagement with your family, with your community, because this program doesn't mean that you become a hermit. This program means you continue to engage, because that's how we thrive as humans. So on average, in a DBA program, you're looking at anywhere from 10 to 20 hours of research, writing, integrating ideas, talking to your mentor. And so those are the requirements for your week. Also, in every 10-week term, you meet face-to-face with your cohort on one of our two campuses, Palo Alto or Costa Mesa. You meet for 6 hours. And typically those are early on a Saturday morning. You have the rest of your weekend free then, and it's 3 times during the 10 weeks. So we've found that students really want that face-to-face conversation, and we know that people have full-time jobs, and so they need to be able to do their reading, their discussions, their mentoring when they can schedule it most conveniently. So we think this is the blend of the best, face-to-face and on your own.
Okay, now that's great. Now, to kind of build off of that, let's say that a student would like to gain more insight and more information about a particular topic and they want to hear from faculty. Do faculty offer some sort of extra support, like office hours or other times that they can meet with faculty to inquire about particular topics or to gain clarification? Like, what does that look like?
All of our, I'm really probably the most fortunate chair in the world, and that I believe that we have the most incredibly committed and yet innovative faculty that work with this program. All of our faculty, including, of course, me, we all have office hours, and then we also offer, because we know that sometimes our office hours may not meet a need, we're dealing with all time zones. So we're aware of needing to accommodate that. We'll set that up. The other thing is that you bring up a good point, Ashley, about specific content. On a regular basis, I host a facilitated session called Conversations and Considerations. And so those are usually on a topic. So for example, we would have a topic on why transpersonal and business. And so we begin to explore that more. We may have another one focused on why the focus on energy. Why is that important? And so also as students go through the program, they can join these discussions. So it gives you a really soft landing on presenting because you're in a safe space surrounded by your faculty advisors and your faculty. So you gain confidence, I think, and you gain expertise by participating, presenting. And then Sophia is really known for putting on our summits. And so you're given an opportunity to present at those as well and to attend. And so that's another resource and way to get information. And of course, there's always the research and that we all get to enjoy and participate in.
That's awesome. In terms of, now there are some programs that encourage students to be part of different types of associations. Like life coaches usually will go to the International Coaching Federation direction, and they will become members there, and that's what faculty encourage. Are there any really specific organizations that you encourage students to be a part of, or any like any particular it could be like a news source that you want them to regularly check upon, or anything specific? Or do you prefer that the students find their own resources and passions and go in that direction?
We have 3 resources that we recommend right up front. One of them we will make available to students, and that's the International Association of Sustainability Professionals. That's as the title suggests, an association of folks internationally who are really vested, interested, and just tenacious about resolving some of our most global issues. The second is the International Leadership Association. And again, because the second, one of the 2 parts of this program is developing yourself as a leader, being with other leaders is something that we encourage. And so that's another international, and all of these associations that we're encouraging the students to look at and think about are international in focus. And we know that there are local groups that you should also think and talk about. I happen to live in the Seattle area, so our Green Biz Association is really an important, kind of collective. So both looking globally and then kind of networking, you get to find out what's happening in your own neighborhood that sometimes you don't know about. So both are really welcomed and strongly encouraged. We want students, again, part of leading changes in this kind of volatile world that we all live in, and are trying to find ways to thrive within. Give us an opportunity to talk with one another, to communicate with one another, to bring up perhaps conflicting ideas. We need to know how to have those tough conversations and still be kind and respectful to one another. And so any of these events where we can have people speak and present and listen and learn, we really want students to attend. And it's to the advantage of building your own leadership plan and your project plan.
Yeah, that actually brings up a really good point, because in some industries, I do talk to students about, like, what is expected in terms of their own mental fortitude, should we say. So essentially, I do tell students, in the business world, like you said, we always want to be respectful and highly communicative, but you do need to have a little bit of a thicker skin, maybe compared to other industries, and you have to assimilate a decent amount of information. So that's something that I think is really important when I talk to students. These are the types of conversations that we often have. But then in terms of, and this is wonderful in terms of like the resources that you are giving students, areas of places that you'd like them to attend and be members of. But then when it comes time, because I always get this question in admissions a lot, when it comes time to graduate, so let's say they're close to graduating, they've completed their projects, finished up their research, and they've gone through that kind of like applying that research process and benchmarking the success of what they're working toward. Now it's time for them to springboard into the job sector. So when it comes to a resume building or vetting, building a network closer to the end of the program, or actually launching into potential careers, where are the areas where these students are likely going? What professional direction are they launching in, and how much do we help them to get in that direction? Or is that something that is more self-guided through what the student is pursuing? Because it can go either direction sometimes.
Yeah, I would never close down either of those avenues. All avenues, I think, are part of what in the 3 years they will really garner this innovative approach to this critical thinking and creativity at the same time. There are, the recruitment is taking mid-level or executives, so they're in a job already, and we know that things change. The person may change. What they're interested in may really shift. I've had in my career, I've had people who've been really successful in business, like a T-Mobile, for example, suddenly shift and say, I've done that. I've been a highly successful, and now I'd like to turn my contributions to being a social entrepreneur. I really want to address nonprofits in this way. And so we know through this process, the person changes and interest changes. But don't forget, they've been in a learning community of diverse people. And so there will be an avenue there for a vast network. And they will have spent time, we hope, speaking and presenting. We'll certainly, as faculty, nudge and encourage. And so that's open as well. And the third thing that we always talk to students about, again, when they come in to the program as part of the admissions, one of the questions that I always ask is, have you talked to your family? Because they'll be on this journey with you for 3 years as well. It's not just you getting a DBA, it's your family and your community. And have you talked to your employer? Because is your employer going to understand that you may not be available on a weekend for a special initiative or a special project? And setting the stage and having a conversation about where does the employer see the next growth? Because you want to be in those conversations, and that's part of leadership, projecting for what's needed in the future. So those are the ways that people are most successful in not only finding the next role, but in finding that meaning and purpose that I think at this level people are looking for. And certainly it's transpersonal.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and I really appreciate that emphasis as well, because there are times where students will come because they're either really forward thinking, meaning they're already thinking about graduation, or they're kind of currently stuck in the present in terms of worrying about roadblocks. And here's an example of what I mean. So let's say a student comes and they do not have a background in business administration. Myself, as an example, let's say I wanted to come to the DBA program. My master's is in health and strategic communication. So it's not quite in business, but it's business adjacent. Would someone like me be eligible for this program, or like do they have to have a master's in business administration? Like, what are you looking for in terms of candidate? How diverse can the candidate pool be?
Boy, I have seen the candidates be most successful if they come from the arts because they are creative thinkers, they are innovative, they color outside the lines. In fact, there are no lines. And so that's what we really need as we think about being in a volatile, complex world. We are really and have never said you must have an MBA to move into the DBA. There's just no correlation there, in our opinion. We want to know, are you a critical thinker? Are you curious? Are you willing to change? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to be in conversation with your colleagues? Are you willing to tackle a complex issue in our world? And so that's what we're looking for. And the degree, the experience, all of that together makes someone a good candidate.
No, I love that. That's great. Because, and I appreciate that open-mindedness aspect to it, which I think is really important, because I'm sure it's clear to the listeners now that we care very much about not only their professional development, but their personal development, and then being adequate enough and strong enough to pursue this type of program. But because it is at the doctorate level, I am aware that students might occasionally get close to that kind of almost that mental burnout when they're going through this process. We're realistic. We know that's part of the education process, even at the master's level. So, what are your tips from your professional experience for students to practice self-care while they're going through this program? Are there any like particular trends that you've seen that are very helpful to make sure that people are successful mentally and emotionally through this process?
It's one of the things, thank you for bringing it up. It's their very first course that they take with me on transformative, or I'm sorry, it's transpersonal business and the entrepreneurial mind. So that is their first course. It's 3 credits. It really starts to look at the entrepreneur, not only in business, but the entrepreneur of self. What are my principles of caring for self? Why is that important? If you think about flying, and I know this is an old story, but if you don't think about putting the mask on yourself first, you can't help anyone around you. And so a key principle of this course is, let's think about your 3 years. Let's think about how you move through. Let's think about how you absorb information. Some people are just racers. Other people will take time to pause and think. And all of these ways of learning and being are important, but the self-care is essential. And then what we add in as we go through this, for example, on Tuesday mornings from 6:30 until 7:30, I host a writing it down. It's a quiet time. It's a time for people to write their projects, their dissertations, an article. We start off with a meditation that's brief but grounding. We write together for 50 minutes, and then we do a quick debrief. But it's a quiet, focused, meditative space for writing in community. And so there are those interventions that we know and have tested that allow thriving through the 3 years. And you're
Oh,
also mentored by your peers to say, Mary Kay, you're getting a little weary here. Have you thought about taking a break in this way or that way? So we have this built in, our peers that get to know us, and get to probably give feedback in a way that can be heard, because your job is not dependent on it. These are your friends and colleagues giving this feedback.
yeah. And so many people will not realize that they're approaching that kind of point where they're going to need to take some time to rest and recuperate. Oftentimes others will see that. All of us have our own little blind spot when it comes to a combination of triggers, energy levels, things like that. And we do rely on one another as a community in order to kind of take care of one another. So I guess that kind of leans into my next question of, how do you think the Sofia University environment is different from other programs, either that you've taught in or participated in? Like, what in your mind makes us pretty unique, not only for this program, but as an institution?
What a great question. I think that you can't get too far away from the foundation of transpersonal to talk about the uniqueness of the organization. And it's not just an academic model. It's a way of being together. Every meeting that we go in, whether it's a strategic meeting or whether it's an academic creative meeting, we often will start with a grounding. And isn't that a humane way to allow each other to catch our breath, to move into presence, and to be able to focus and be intentional about the work in front of us? In a transpersonal environment too, it doesn't mean that we don't have tough conversations, but the way we have tough conversations is with regard and kindness for one another. Knowing that these blind spots, isn't it great that we know we have them? And isn't it great that I have a you to say, have you thought about? What about, would you accept a small reframe? What about this way of looking at things? So I think what makes us so unique and unusual is not only the foundation that we've had, gosh, for I think it's over 50 years now, close to 52, right? And so we certainly have solid footing there, and it's also a way of being, knowing, and doing.
Yeah, that captures the transpersonal essence a lot, because so many people don't even know, like, what does it mean to be transpersonal, or what does development through the self really mean? And it's that mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual development. Not to say that anyone has to follow any particular organized religion. If they do, we respect that. If they don't, we respect that. It's about whole person integration. And that's in admissions what I talk with students about a lot. I'm privileged enough to be able to hear some of these anecdotes of personal experiences and how students have realized that a direction that they're moving in maybe doesn't align with their value systems as much. And they know that they're going to be global change makers. They just don't know where to go or what next steps to take. And that's often where students end up in the admissions office with us to acquire that guidance. And in conjunction with faculty, we help them to realize that there are programs out there that care about their well-being, that there are cohorts that are going to facilitate their learning process. They're going to make lifelong, not only networks, but friends. I remind people that these are not only your colleagues, they're going to be your future friends as well. You're going to help one another professionally, even personally sometimes. So I think that's the beauty of not only being a student at Sophia, but keeping in mind that we are one large transpersonal family. So I always want to testify to the fact that the staff are wonderful, inviting, accommodating, and communicative people. Same with the faculty, because we are all one functional unit together as an institution. So that's something that I really want students to kind of be aware of. So what I'll do now is kind of flip the script, whether you have
Okay.
any questions for me, or if there's a message you want to convey to our listeners. What would you like them to know? What would you like to say? It's totally up to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for this. It's really fun reflecting on where we are, isn't it? That we're in this a unique time in our world, post-COVID, and yet COVID is still with us, and we don't know the impact that it's had. But what a perfect time to come together and say, we know there are these challenges out here, and we know we have the stamina, the courage, the innovative lens, and the colleagues in order to make meaningful change in the world. And we know that assistance is but a Zoom away, if we need it. And so the message I would leave is that if you want to deepen your leadership, if you want to strengthen your presence, if you want to move to a more mindful way of being with these complex issues that require a different kind of courage than I think we needed before COVID, perhaps, that it will take us a while to see where this and other huge interventions like artificial intelligence are taking all of this. These are top of mind, massive changes coming our way. How can we contribute to resiliency in a community of leaders? And this is an invitation for you to consider, Sophia, and to consider investing 3 years of meaningful change and transformation in your own life in order to change the world. So we welcome that sort of energy and commitment.
Oh, I love that. That very beautifully and articulately said. I appreciate that message, and I'm sure our prospective students and listeners are really going to enjoy that as well. I hope that everyone who walks through the doors at Sophia, their heart will be as warm as mine was when I first started working here, and I've been working here for a few years now, and it's just an exceptional learning environment, and I feel that young and old alike, all minds are going to be nurtured here. We have students from all walks of life, different cultures. So I think another thing I'll testify to is the enrichment of all these different perspectives are really going to contribute to their growth. So I appreciate that message, and just making sure that everyone's aware of what's going on. And we're moving into what I like to kind of call like a new earth, where there's more awareness, more understanding, more compassion. And it will take some time to get there, but we're creating those stepping stones and building blocks now so that the future can be that much more brighter. So is there anything else you'd like to mention, or are we good to go, or totally up to you?
I would say that you shouldn't hesitate. You should call Ashley immediately and have conversations with her. Don't hesitate. And
Yes.
even though you may not be ready today, it's now is a good time to start the conversation because you may be ready 6 months or a year from now. So please
Yeah.
contact us. We're ready to hear from you, learn with you, and to encourage you in your next adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. The admissions office is available during normal business hours. Some of us also email in the evening as well, and on weekends. So be rest assured that we will be communicating with you, talking about the admissions process, the program. We provide resources, including the academic catalog, for you to kind of learn about the program and understand the teaching modality. We have these videos as resources as well for students who are interested in learning about the faculty, their communication style, and of course, the faculty interview will be part of this process as well. We move you along the admissions process, but that communication with us doesn't stop. You're welcome to still contact us if you're interested in other programs to let us know how you're doing, and we're a family here. So I want to make sure that students feel so comfortable. And just like you mentioned, Dr. Chess, it's important for students to remember that just because they're not ready now, it doesn't mean they won't be ready in the future. I communicate with students even for a few years just to check in on them and see how they're doing. So let's get this conversation started, and the rest will take care of itself. But thank you to everyone listening. Thank you, Dr. Chess, for your time, your insight, and your patience with us. And I look forward to everyone who walks through these doors having a wonderful academic and transpersonal experience. Until next time, thank you all and take care. Have a wonderful day.